Hello and welcome to TAL Radio. At TAL, we connect those who are willing to give to those who are in need. My lovely audience and my wonderful listeners, you're listening and watching to a wonderful series on self coaching. And whenever I say self coaching, you know who's going to be the guest. Well, let's welcome Andrew Tallents. Andrew is a self coaching expert and has coached hundreds of CEOs and leaders across the globe. Andrew, welcome to TAL Radio.
Thanks, Sandy. Lovely to be with you again.
Lovely. And I think today is something very important because we would be talking about another big demon in our life. It's saboteurs. How to confront them, especially your internal saboteurs. How do we fight them? How do we really punch them on their face? And how do we get over them? So starting about, let's just start. And I would really like to start by asking, to begin with exactly what are internal saboteurs and how do they show up in our day-to-day thoughts and behaviors?
So internal saboteurs are those voices in our head that show up for all of us as human beings. Some people out there listening to this may remember a book called The Chimp Paradox by Steve Peters. And he talked about the internal critic voice. So that voice always criticizes and provides doubt. And all the saboteurs are, as we talk about them today, are an extension of that idea. They're the inner voices that we have that are unhelpful. They are, interestingly, as we'll go on to discuss, trying to protect us because the voices were formed in our heads when we were children. And they are there to protect us in a certain environment that we were afraid in at that time, usually in a family system or an education system or early work system that we're in. And so they turn up to say, look, you shouldn't be doing this. Remember what happened last time? You shouldn't be doing this now. And so it creates these negative thoughts, and that's what the saboteurs are. So we're going to go on to explore how they manifest, how they show up, and every single person listening to this has them. And so hopefully they can relate to them as they appear and how to manage them more effectively.
I think how to manage them is something which everybody will be really looking forward to in this podcast, So why is it really important to recognize and confront saboteurs, especially when we talk about self-coaching? I mean, and if somebody's on a self-coaching journey, why is it that important?
Yeah, so when we make the best decisions in life, whatever they are, whether they are in relationships or in relation to the work that we do, it's usually a better result if we make it from this position of being discerning about the decision we're going to make. So we're coming with the information which is from a positive place. We're feeling positive about the information. Might not always be information we want to hear, but we're feeling generally discerning about it. We're being matter of fact and recognizing it is as it is. We're accepting of that situation. When the saboteurs are there trying to protect us, those voices in our head, it usually makes us think from this negative place, and we're thinking from a place of judging. We'll come on to the judge later on how that manifests, but it means we're judging things. And therefore, when we're judging things, we tend to make decisions which are a bit knee-jerk, not well thought through. They're just coming from a negative place, which tends to be more self-protective as opposed to holistic. And that's why, from a self-coaching perspective, we need to be aware of them when they appear. We need to make sure we can manage them effectively and move into this place of being discerning and positive of mindset so we can make the right decision.
While you were explaining this, Andrew, it literally seems so easy. It's like, I have a demon in my head that's telling me, don't do this.
Yeah.
But if I listen to Andrew, it's like, oh, I need to let it go.
Absolutely.
Is it really that easy?
Well, there's a theme going through this series, and it's not easy. It is easier when an individual has this ability to practice mindfulness and be present in the moment, because as soon as we move into that place of mindfulness or presence in the moment, it means we cannot be of negative thought, because the whole point of being present is you are in the moment. You cannot have negative thoughts in the moment. It's easily done in the sense of the simplicity of it, but to do it in our busy lives takes a lot of practice and different forming of habits. And don't forget, we should always ask people to help us for this.
Lovely. And no wonder people should listen to TALRadio, as you just mentioned some time back. So moving on, what are some of the common types of internal saboteurs, if people really want to understand what they are? And how can someone really identify the ones which are very dominant in their life?
So what I'm going to start with is for people to start to understand when the saboteurs might be present. So when the internal voices aren't being helpful. And then we'll go on to name a couple that people might relate to, particularly leaders out there. So if we start to think about when we're in judgment mode, so we're feeling negative, and we feel negative many times during a day. We will feel negative at some point during this. Not many times, but we will. We'll have a thought about what happened yesterday or what might happen tomorrow. It'll be a negative thought. And when we think like that, we're either judging three different situations. We're either judging myself, so I'm being critical of myself, I'm being negative about myself. I'm not good enough. I can't do this. We're either judging other people. So, Sandy, you're not good enough. You can't do this. Why are you wasting my time? So, I'm judging somebody else. It's coming from a negative place. It sounds and feels negative. Or I'm judging my environment and I'm saying, this is not fair. Why is it raining? Why is the market going against me? Why did COVID happen? But I'm blaming and judging my environment. And as soon as we start to think one of those three things following a negative feeling, it means one of our saboteurs is in play. It always is in play. So the judge gives us the sense we know now our awareness is raised and the saboteur is in play. Now, for those that are listening to this, there's probably 3 or 4 key saboteurs that will be our voices in our head, which will appear when we're feeling negative. So I'll just mention them briefly, and then we might explore some of them. So the first one, which is very, very present in leaders generally, is the saboteur called hyperachiever. So this is a voice in our head that says, you must do better. You must try harder. You must succeed. You must make sure you achieve this. And even though that can be a positive thing when we're feeling in a positive mindset, when we're feeling negative, it's just trying to make us work harder at being successful. And the problem with that is, because it's trying to protect us to say you need to be better at what you do, is sometimes it's a time to stop trying. We just don't need to succeed in this moment. It's about more important to be in relationship with somebody. So there'll be people out there that know if they've got hyperachiever saboteur that's making them feel negative, it's about it's never good enough. We need to make sure we're succeeding. We need to smash our targets. And you know when you're around this kind of person when the saboteur is present because you almost succeed in something and there's no celebration. There's no pause for breath. We're on to climb the next mountain.
Yeah.
Come on, let's go. Yeah. So that's hyperachiever. I'll name 2 more and then we can explore them. The second one, which is really interesting for a lot of leaders, is called hyper-rational. The best way to describe this one when we're feeling negative is that if we're in a relationship, which we're in relationships all the time, which has got some kind of feeling or emotion in the relationship, what the hyper-rational saboteur is telling us is don't get emotional, don't show feeling. You know that what happened last time you did that. And therefore, we go very much into a rational, almost cold type of mindset where we shut our emotion down and we don't show feelings. Many leaders do this. Now, the problem with that is when we're in a relationship with other people, they want us to feel, they want us to be empathetic, and yet we shut it off by that saboteur that's coming through. And then the third one, which I know, Sandy, we talked about in the past, which I think is important, that comes through, is the controller. And the controller saboteur basically tells the individual, you're not in control of the situation. You need to gain more control right now. And of course, we all know the reality is that nobody's in control of anything apart from how they react to what's going on around them. So all these saboteurs, when we think about them, are, and there's 7 more, by the way, so there are 7 more saboteurs you can explore. We're going to talk about where you can find out about these later, and you can get a free survey to do to find out your own, which will be fun at the end, is when these are present, all of these saboteurs, they think they're trying to protect us and help us. Because as far as they're concerned, when they first came into our heads, we were children. And they were trying to protect us in that environment of where we were actually trying to survive in that moment. So it's like a survival mechanism. What the saboteurs haven't worked out is that we're not children anymore. We're adults and we don't need them to behave in the way that they behave anymore. And that's where a lot of the self-coaching can really work. But that's probably a good brief summary of what people will relate to.
So in a nutshell, it really made me feel that there's so many saboteurs around us, and probably we are the only positive people, and we really need to deal with it.
Yep.
So moving on, are there any specific signs or indications that one can really understand? Oh, now saboteurs are at play, and I really need to take care of the situation now.
Yeah. So first of all, which we've talked about, we're feeling as though we're negative. So that's a really good sign. So if we're feeling negative, the saboteurs are in play. The second thing, which is a really good indicator, is when the voice in our head is saying something like should. You should be doing this. You should be thinking about this. You should be behaving this way. Because when we say should, it comes from a judgment place. It's obviously somebody in our head that's judging the fact that we're not doing something we should. So should is a good one when the voice in our head said, you should do this now, Sandy. So that's a good note to way they're in play. And also, some people are really good at connecting with some kind of feeling they have in their body somewhere. So sometimes it might be the pit of our stomach, we're feeling very heavy, or it might be in our chest, we're just feeling as though it's maybe getting a little bit tight. Or sometimes people become flushed in their neck area or their lower face and they come out a little bit red. And so these indicators sometimes can tell us that the saboteurs are in play because they're there to try and protect us. And yet we don't need them in our lives because they don't necessarily enable us to make good decisions.
True, your body always gives you sign for whatever is happening. Actually, the universe
Absolutely.
also gives you a sign that like whatever is happening,
Yep.
this is what you need to take control of.
Absolutely.
So moving on, since you're a self-coaching expert, so are there any practical self-coaching techniques that you could recommend to our audience, so that they really know how to defeat this sabotage?
So there's a few things. So when I'm working with clients, the best way, and anyone can do this, is as soon as they start to feel negative, and we can't be rushing around and looking at our phones all the time. You need to start creating an environment for you where you can really start to reflect on this. And we'll come to some techniques in a moment. But the first thing is, I'm noticing I'm feeling negative right now. Let me be aware that that's not good for me, health-wise, mind-wise, decision-making-wise. Let me understand what I'm feeling right now. And the great thing is, which Sandy, and we've all done this, as soon as we start to notice a feeling, whether that's a pain or some kind of feeling, it usually dissipates in some way. It's not as strong as it was when we first felt it. So focusing on the feeling through mindfulness or just focusing on the breathing sometimes dissipates, which means we can start to become aware that the feeling's there and the saboteur is there. And at least then we know in that moment we have this ability and choice as human beings to try and move into the present moment. Now, when we move into the present moment, however we do that, it means the saboteur cannot be present because we're not feeling negative anymore. The way people can do that, I think we may have mentioned this in a previous podcast, but I'm going to demonstrate it, is to take your thumb and your first finger and then just rub them together. So people can't see that. Just rub the finger and thumb together and feel a nail of each your finger and thumb and ridges. And when you're doing that and feeling your physical being, you've got to become present. So that's one way of doing that. But the second is just change the energy. So we're both sitting down at the moment, but actually just changing the energy of either standing up or moving means, again, we've become more aware of our body and we can try and become more present. So there's some of the techniques. Now, it may be that our saboteurs are so strong and trying to protect us that even if we do those things, it still tries to be present and make us feel that negative and affect us in that way. But at least we can start trying these techniques and be kind to ourselves over time. Usually most of my clients that are working on this stuff with me, it takes them a good 6 to 12 months to really start managing their saboteurs. But we can do it. We can all do it.
I think something that we really need to understand is saboteurs literally come to sabotage a lot of things in our life.
They do. But they're not. What I really love about this is that and you mentioned at the start, we should never try and get rid of our saboteur because they're a key part of who we are and where we came from, our childhood in particular. But what we can do is actually manage them more effectively so they actually support us and strengthen us as opposed to weaken us and make us feel more negative. So it's just changing the relationship with those voices in our head.
And what about journaling and inner dialogues, like talking to yourself? Does it also help?
It does. So what I love about this is that journaling, not everyone likes to do this, but I think you can either now talk into a phone, which obviously you need to know is secure, but if you actually talk and dictate into the phone and then listen to it back, you can actually hear that voice in your head. So it actually separates it from you because our saboteurs are not us. They're voices in our head, which were formed when we were children. So therefore, just listening to it and hearing what's going on, and hearing sometimes the childishness in the voice and just the kind of language is really useful. Journaling, some people prefer writing. And what I advise there is just to actually write down how the saboteur makes you feel and just write it down. Try not to take the pen off the paper, just continue writing maybe for 3 minutes. And then just usually it feels a bit better. You've got it out of your system. It's just there and you reflected upon it. And then the final thing that some people do is actually just keep a little tally chart, either on their phone or a piece of paper, of every time that they feel negative in a day. And what I love about that exercise, even though it's quite shocking when we do it to begin with, because it's a lot, there's a lot of times we feel negative, it just raises the awareness that maybe the saboteurs are more present within us than we really believe. And therefore just raises the awareness for us to actually start to notice them, be curious about them. why are they coming when they come, and what can we learn from them, because we can learn a lot from them.
Lovely. Thanks, Siddhant, for explaining that. In fact, something that one thing very particular you said in this very podcast that I really, I mean, I've never heard about it. I'm sure audience also must feel pretty taken aback or surprised in a beautiful way. It's like everybody does journaling. I mean, it's probably a fashion in today's world. People used to write diaries earlier, but now they do journaling a lot. It's like writing continuously for 3 minutes. Now,
Yes.
I that is without even taking off the pen from the
Yes.
paper.
Because then
That
you're
is
getting all
something.
your thoughts out.
Yes,
So rather than actually trying to clarify them or write down what's right, it's just writing down what's in your head. You're listening to the voice of the saboteur. So doing that when we're feeling negative until we run out the 3 minutes, and then we're just seeing what's being said. What's the voice saying to them? We just separate it again because it's not us.
I like that. That's a very amazing technique. I mean, it sounds really amazing because we all have this habit of writing, but probably not at a stretch of 3 minutes. Just like venting out things in the diary.
Absolutely.
Lovely. So moving on, could you just share, because we love listening to your stories. Your clients are just amazing. So is there any, real life story that you can really, let our listeners know about where a client of yours, of course, we're going to keep the name anonymous here, were really able to get rid of these saboteurs, their internal saboteurs with the help of self-coaching?
Yeah, so it's a matter of managing as opposed to getting rid, but because we do need to keep them. So I'll give you a quick story about what happened. So the first thing was that the chief executive I was working with was part of a business where they had a board of directors. And for some reason, when they went into the board meeting, it was only when they went into the board meeting for those 3 hours, for some reason, when they were feeling negative, they didn't feel they could voice their opinions. So that there was something holding them back. The saboteur was saying, you need to hold this back. And it was a hyperachiever, by the way, the hyperachiever saboteur, because it was saying, don't speak because you're going to get this wrong. You need to get this right. So don't speak. You're not allowed to say it. And he was being held back. Now, the first step is to become aware that it was the saboteur that was holding him back, not him. So we became aware of that. The second thing that we did through his self-coaching was to become really curious about the hyperachiever. And the way we did that, which your listeners can actually relate to here, is when we actually think about that saboteur, whichever one it is that shows up for us, to almost try and personify them in some way. So I like to do this in terms of almost creating a cartoon character. So if our saboteur was a cartoon character, what would it look like? Is it an existing cartoon character? Is it a cartoon character we can create? So almost belittle it in a way and really visualize, what it might be. So imagine the saboteur sitting on the table in front of us now. What would it look like? How big would it be? Because it's a part of our personality, but it's not us. So the leader basically did that and started to really be curious about it. And then what was really skillful through the self-coaching, through practice with me, is that when he went into the next board meeting, he almost did this exercise before he went in, which was basically saying, right, this hyperachiever saboteur is now going to come out of me because it's not part of me, plonked it on the table, could visualize the actual cartoon character, and said, I want you to stay there until I actually come out of the board meeting because you're part of me and you're really valuable at times, but not today. Went into the board meeting, and as far as he was concerned, that part of him wasn't present for the next 2 or 3 hours. And amazing as it sounds, it actually worked for him because he felt he could speak without being limited by the fear of failure around him saying it in the right way. So it's a really interesting process. It doesn't happen overnight, but a bit of awareness, personifying, thinking about the saboteur and seeing it for what it is, which is only a part of you that's trying to help and is unskillful in doing so, means you can change your character in certain key moments. Now, don't forget the saboteurs, when you're feeling positive, can really help you, and they're all superpowers. Because a hyperachiever, for example, will help you to succeed when you're feeling positive because it's really driven. It's when we're feeling negative that we need to understand and be curious about how they're affecting our lives.
I think the method you really explained to some time back was very interesting. Is to imagine them as some cartoon characters, put them aside, and you're good to go. That was a wonderful experience to even listen to it. So moving on, Andrew, what is your message to someone who really feels like they do have internal saboteurs and they're winning over them, and they're in this, the cycle of self-doubt or a very negative cycle at the moment?
Yeah, so there's two approaches here. One is very simple, but again, difficult to do. So there's a field of psychology called positive psychology. So I would encourage people to read about this, listen to podcasts about it, audiobooks. And basically the philosophy behind that is if you are feeling positive and accepting of your situation, however bad it is, it is very difficult for the saboteurs to play and to be part of your life because they feed on negativity. So that's one simple way that somebody out there now can start to change their lives by seeing things. But what's the gift in this situation? What's the positivity in this? The second, if that's really difficult for people, and it is for a lot of people, particularly if we're under pressure or we're feeling depressed or we're just feeling a very difficult situation right now, is going back to what I said earlier about trying to just get present as often as we can. So in this present moment, let's just think about who we are and what we're doing now so we can mitigate the negativity. And it's hard for some people, but if we've got a close partner, a close friend, a close work colleague, get them to start noticing and telling us in confidence and in safety about when they're noticing that we're feeling negative or being negative. Because again, it just gives us that trigger to say, okay, well, which saboteur was in play then? Which one was it really coming in? So they're probably two of the techniques that people can use.
And stay in the present. I think I really like that, and I'm sure we would really advise our listeners and our lovely audience to stay in the present, keep on listening, and keep on watching to us. And Andy, if there's somebody who really wants to get connected with you, what is the easiest way and the fastest way to reach out to you?
So the best way is if they just go to andrewtallents.com. You can go to LinkedIn and just type in Andrew Tallents there. And finally, for those that are interested, if you just go to the website positiveintelligence.com, or you can type in saboteur assessment, and it will come up there, and you can get a free assessment, which is not mine, it's Shirzad Shameen's, but you don't pay for it. You can actually answer a few questions in about 10 minutes. It will actually give you a report for free that tells you what your top saboteurs are, so you can at least become more aware and curious about them.
Become more aware and keep on listening to TALRadio. Thanks a ton, and thank you, Andrew, so much for joining us today. We'll catch up our lovely audience again next week with another interesting topic. So till then, stay tuned in and keep on listening and watching to TALRadio. Have a great day ahead.